Have you ever witnessed a moment so broken, so utterly defeated, that it felt like you were looking at the ghost of a person? What do you do when you see a soul hit rock bottom right in front of you? Before we unravel a story of unimaginable kindness and the ferocious justice that followed, I need you to answer that in the comments below, and tell me where you're watching from, because the events of this rainy Atlanta night will connect us all. The rain wasn't just falling. It was a liquid curtain, blurring the neon glow of the Hallmark store sign into a watercolor smear. Inside a gleaming, black Range Rover, a ghost haunting the shell of a six-figure automobile. A man sat with his forehead pressed against the steering wheel. He hadn't moved in 20 minutes. Maya Williams, pulling the thin hood of her raincoat tighter, had watched him from the bus stop. She'd seen men cry before, but this was different. This was a grief so profound it seemed to have carved canyons into his face, visible even through the rain-streaked glass. "Sir, are you all right?" Her voice was soft, barely a whisper against the drumming of the rain. No response. She stepped off the curb, her worn sneakers splashing in a puddle. "Sir," she repeated, her knuckles rapping gently on the driver's side window. He finally turned, a slow, agonizing pivot, as if moving through deep water. His eyes were bloodshot, two dying embers in a face creased with an exhaustion that went far beyond simple fatigue. She knew that look. It was the same hollowed-out expression her own mother had worn the day the doctor's words hung in the air like poison. Inoperable. It was the look of someone who had just run out of road, out of hope, out of options. "I'm fine," he muttered. But the brokenness in his voice was a betrayal, a jagged edge that snagged on the lie. "No," Maya said simply, her voice gentle but firm as she stepped closer to the door. "You're not." Their eyes met for the first time, and in that shared glance, something electric passed between them. It wasn't a recognition of faces, but of circumstance. A silent acknowledgement of the universal language of pain. And then the man exhaled, a long, shuddering release of air, as if it was the first breath he'd taken in days. "You don't know who I am, do you?" he asked. A ghost of pride still clung to his words, a last stubborn ember in the ashes of his composure. "No, sir. Should I?" He hesitated, as if the name itself was a burden. "I'm Benjamin Hart. I run Hart Holdings. The hotels, the condos, all those new properties downtown." Her breath caught in her throat. The name was a landmark in the city. Of course, it was plastered on billboards overlooking the interstate, mentioned in reverent tones on the morning business report, featured in Forbes articles about Atlanta's new titans. But it wasn't until that exact moment, with the immense weight of that public name colliding with the raw, private reality of the shattered man in front of her, that something clicked, deep and resonant, in the archives of her memory. If you are already feeling for this man, hit that like button to send some strength his way. This is where our story truly begins. 2 years ago, the sterile beige walls of Atlanta General Hospital, the constant, rhythmic beeping of machines that were supposed to be reassuring, but sounded like a countdown. Her mother, Gladys, pale and frail in the hospital bed. "You," Maya started, her eyes narrowing as the puzzle pieces of her past slammed into place. Did you pay a medical bill at Atlanta General about 2 years back for a woman named Gladys Williams?" His expression shifted. The fog of his personal grief lifted for a moment, replaced by a flicker of recognition. His gaze, which had been fixed on the rain-slicked pavement, now lifted to meet hers fully. "I remember that name," he said, his voice a low rumble. The nurse at the discharge desk was in tears. "She said your mother was about to be sent home early because she couldn't afford the second surgery." Maya's hands, which had been steady just a moment before, began to tremble. We never found out who did it. The bill was just paid, marked as an anonymous foundation grant. We thought it was a miracle. She swallowed hard, the words catching in her throat. That surgery, it saved her life. Benjamin offered a small, tired smile that didn't quite reach his haunted eyes. It was the least I could do. Your mother, she reminded me of my own. Tough, proud, and deserving of far more kindness than the world seemed willing to give her. Maya blinked rapidly, the world blurring as tears welled up. The sheer, cosmic improbability of this moment was overwhelming. You saved her, she whispered, the words barely audible over the rain. You saved my mother's life, and you don't even know me. I didn't do it for thanks, he said quietly. Well, she said, taking a deep, steadying breath and finding a sudden, fierce resolve. You're getting it anyway. A silence hung between them again, but this time it wasn't cold and empty. It was warm, charged with the strange, inexplicable energy of fate. What's got you like this, Mr. Hart? She asked gently, her voice full of a compassion he hadn't heard in a long, long time. He rubbed his face with both hands, the gesture of a man trying to physically wipe away his pain. I lost custody of my son today, he said, the words falling from his lips like stones. The judge said my life is too public, too unstable. His mother, my ex-wife, she painted a picture of me as more of a brand than a father. Was she lying? Maya asked, her question blunt, cutting through the self-pity. He looked at her, surprised by her directness. Yes, but she's very, very good at it. Maya nodded slowly, her mind, the mind of a woman who'd had to fight for everything, already starting to work. You got anything that proves she's lying? Some things. Text messages, emails. Nothing a judge would see as concrete proof. She was careful. She covered her tracks. Maya reached into the pocket of her worn coat and pulled out her old, cracked smartphone. Let me help you. He looked at her, a flicker of his old skepticism returning. You don't even know me. I know enough, she said, her gaze unwavering. You helped my family when we were at our lowest point, with no expectation of anything in return. I don't forget kindness like that. Ever. 3 weeks later, everything had changed. Maya, in the stolen hours between her house-cleaning shifts and late-night internet dives on her slow, aging laptop, had done what Benjamin's high-powered legal team couldn't. She'd tracked down a digital breadcrumb trail, a tampered calendar entry with a ghost IP address, a hidden trail of receipts linked to a private investigator his ex-wife swore she'd never hired. And the final, devastating piece. She found the original, unedited footage from a parenting class seminar. Footage that had been manipulated with deep-fake technology to make Benjamin appear distracted and disengaged. She gathered it all, quietly, precisely, methodically. When she handed the sleek, organized folder to Benjamin in a quiet coffee shop, he held it as if it were a holy relic. I don't know what to say, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Say you'll fight, Maya replied, her voice firm. Not just for you, for your boy. He did, and he won. In a special emergency hearing, the judge, presented with the irrefutable evidence of perjury and digital manipulation, overturned the original decision. Full custody was reinstated to Benjamin. The tabloids tried to spin their own narratives, but the raw, unedited footage spoke a truth louder than any gossip column. 2 months after that, Maya was called to a corner office on the 40th floor of one of Hart Holdings' glittering downtown towers. Benjamin Hart stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, the city of Atlanta sprawling beneath him. His suit was crisp, his eyes were warm and clear. The ghost from the parking lot was gone. I'd like you to come work for me, he said, his voice even. Executive level. Assistant in my new legal outreach and ethics division, 6-figure salary, full benefits, an office with a view. She gaped at him, her mind struggling to process the offer. I'm not qualified for that. I'm a house cleaner. Yes, you are, he said, turning to face her fully. You are organized. You are relentless. You are fiercely intelligent. And you have more integrity and heart than anyone I have hired in the last 10 years. Her eyes watered. Why? She whispered. Because you saved my family, he said simply. Now, let me help you build yours. Maya nodded slowly, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. All right, she said, her voice surprisingly steady, but only on one condition. He chuckled, a real warm sound. Name it. I still get to call you out when you're wrong. Deal, he said, extending his hand. And just like that, in the heart of a glass and steel tower, everything changed for both of them. A debt of kindness had been repaid, not with money, but with something far more valuable. A chance. The apartment complex where Maya lived was a world away from the gleaming towers of downtown. It sat just beyond the curve of the Marta line, in a neighborhood where the city's frantic energy softened into the humbler, more intimate rhythms of daily life. Here, sidewalks were cracked, window boxes clung to brick with fierce tenacity, and neighbors greeted each other by name. Inside her small second-floor apartment, the air carried the faint, comforting scent of lavender and old pine cleaner. Her mother's signature scent, a ghost of her former, healthier self that still lingered. Mama, Maya called gently, peeling off her damp coat. You awake? A voice, thin but sharp, came from the back room. Barely. Did you get the honey biscuits from the good bakery? Maya smiled. And the peach preserves. She moved through the narrow hallway, past the framed photos of a life that felt both distant and deeply present. Her graduation from Georgia State, her mother radiant in her nurse's whites, a faded shot of her father before he'd become a ghost himself. In the back room, Gladys Williams was propped against a mountain of pillows, an oxygen tank hissing softly beside her. Her body was frail, but her eyes were as sharp and intelligent as ever. You're late, Gladys observed. I ran into someone, Maya replied, setting a grocery bag on the dresser. A man? A moment, Maya said, then sighed. Mama, you remember that anonymous donor, the one who paid your hospital bill 2 years ago? Gladys's gaze narrowed. What about him? I met him tonight, just randomly. He was sitting in his car, crying, in the Hallmark parking lot. Gladys frowned. The billionaire? That Benjamin Hart from the news? Maya nodded. He's going through something awful. Lost custody of his son. Lord have mercy, Gladys muttered. That's a heavy cross to bear. I offered to help him. Gladys raised a skeptical eyebrow. You offered to help a billionaire? Child, what can you do for a man like that? I owe him a debt I can never truly repay, Maya said simply. He showed us kindness when he had no reason to. Just kindness. Gladys studied her daughter for a long moment, her sharp eyes seeing the fire that burned beneath Maya's quiet exterior. Well, she finally said, a man like that, with the world watching him, he'll need someone with sense and fire. Lucky for him, he found you. Maya gave a small laugh. You always say that like it's both a blessing and a curse. It is, Gladys confirmed. That night, after her mother was settled, Maya sat at her tiny kitchen table, her old, slow laptop humming. She hadn't worked in a legal office, but she had been pre-law before her mother's illness had derailed her life. She understood systems, and more importantly, she understood people, especially when they were lying. Something about Benjamin Hart's story, the way his ex-wife had so perfectly curated a narrative of a neglectful father, itched at the back of her mind. She began to dig. Court records, public filings, articles buried on the back pages of business journals. She found something strange in the timeline his ex-wife had presented to the court. Claims about Benjamin's absences during key moments in his son's life. Vacations he supposedly took alone while their son was sick. But then, Maya found it. An article from 3 years prior showing Benjamin Hart at a charity event during one of those alleged absent weeks. He was handing out supplies at a children's hospital, and standing right beside him, smiling and holding a teddy bear, was his son. That was a start. The next day, between scrubbing floors and organizing pantries in the sprawling mansions of Buckhead, Maya took her lunch break in a quiet pantry and made calls. To old journalism contacts, to hospital administrators, to a friend from college who now worked as a paralegal. "What are you doing, Maya?" her friend Kelsey asked. "Helping someone who helped me," she answered, "and maybe making a little bit of justice happen while I'm at it." Later that week, Benjamin called her, his voice different, a note of hope cutting through the exhaustion. "You weren't kidding," he said. "This stuff you found, the charity event, it's real." "Told you," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "You have an eye for inconsistencies. You should have been a lawyer." "I wanted to be," she admitted, "until life rerouted me." There was a pause. "Can I ask you something, Maya? Why are you really doing all this for me?" She hesitated, then told him the unvarnished truth. "Because I remember what it felt like when the system said my mother didn't deserve the care she needed to live, when everyone looked away. And then, out of nowhere, someone said otherwise. Someone didn't look away. That someone was you." He was quiet for a long moment. "I'm glad we met in that parking lot, Maya." Over the next 2 weeks, they became an unlikely, formidable team. He provided the resources. She provided the relentless, methodical digging. Her evenings were a blur of cross-referencing flight logs, subpoenaed phone records, and social media footprints. She uncovered patterns, nanny testimonies that had been conveniently omitted, financial documents that were misstated, even email threads where the opposing lawyer appeared to be coaching false testimony. One evening, on a rare good night, Maya helped her mother out to their small porch. "You're doing good work, girl," Gladys said, her voice soft but sure. "I'm just trying to make something right." Gladys looked up at the twilight sky. "Justice ain't always loud, baby. Sometimes it's the quiet ones, the ones who notice things, who have to carry it forward." By the end of the 3rd week, Benjamin's new legal team had everything they needed. Maya's file, delivered in person, was a masterclass in quiet investigation. At the next hearing, the judge, initially unmoved, began to frown as Benjamin's attorney laid out the new evidence. Contradictions stacked up. Witness statements collapsed under the weight of documented facts. False dates unraveled. Maya didn't go to the courthouse. She was at work, polishing a marble countertop in a cold, silent kitchen. But when her phone rang that afternoon, and she heard Benjamin's voice, thick with emotion, say the words, "We did it, Maya, we did it," she sat down on the cold floor and let herself cry for the first time in months, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming release of a debt repaid and a right made whole. Later that evening, a sleek black car, the kind she'd only ever seen in movies, pulled up to her apartment building. The driver, polite and sharply dressed, led her not to a restaurant, but to the towering glass building of Hart Holdings. They took a silent elevator up 32 floors and stepped into a sunlit, modern office where Benjamin waited, no longer the broken man from the SUV. It was there he made the offer. A new life placed in her hands, not as repayment, but as recognition. A recognition of the fire her mother had always seen. Maya's first morning at Hart Holdings was a surreal dream painted in the pre-dawn colors of the Atlanta sky. Zipping up a new navy blazer, an off-brand treasure she'd found on a clearance rack. Her breath caught somewhere between terror and exhilaration. The night before, she'd told her mother, half expecting a lecture on the dangers of flying too close to the sun. Instead, Gladys had simply smiled and said, "God opens doors in the quietest places, baby. It's your job to walk through them." The town car was waiting, its engine a low, respectful hum. As she rode in silence, watching her city come to life, Maya clutched a leather tote bag borrowed from a neighbor, a prop to convince herself she belonged. Hart Holdings was a fortress of glass and steel, a monument to a world she was about to enter. The marble lobby was vast and silent, her own heartbeat the loudest sound she could hear. "Name?" the guard asked, not looking up. "Maya Williams, He raised a hand. "You're cleared, Ms. Williams. Mr. Hart said to send you up the moment you arrived." The express elevator was so fast her stomach lurched. By the time the doors whispered open on the 32nd floor, she wasn't sure her heart had caught up. Benjamin Hart stood in his office, a space that was spacious and modern, yet felt warm. The walls weren't filled with accolades, but with framed photos of a boy of about 10, grinning in every one. A baseball game, a fishing trip, a school recital. These were the artifacts of a life he had fought for, a life she had helped him reclaim. "Maya?" he said warmly. "Welcome." "I still feel like I'm trespassing," she admitted, her voice small. "You're not. You earned this. Come on, let me show you your office." Her office. The words themselves felt foreign. It was just across the hall from his, modest but bright, with a staggering window that overlooked Centennial Park. The team she would be assisting was small and specialized. Legal analysts, a data investigator, and a compliance officer, all handling internal audits and corporate ethics cases. "I'm building this team from scratch," Benjamin explained, "and I want it staffed with people who don't just think like lawyers. I want heart. I want instinct. You have both." "I can't promise I won't make mistakes," she said. "Mistakes mean you're trying," he replied. Later that afternoon, as she organized case files, Maya saw Benjamin through the glass wall of his office. He was seated at his desk, his gaze fixed on a child's crayon drawing of a stick figure family. She tapped gently on his door. "Need anything?" He looked up, startled. "No, just thinking." "About your son?" "Always," he said quietly. There was a beat of silence, the kind Maya had become adept at reading. "You ever think about what comes next?" she asked gently. He gave a dry laugh. "Every day. Winning the custody battle was supposed to be the finish line, but it's not. It's just another starting line." She stepped inside. "Well, if you ever need help figuring out the next puzzle, I'm good at solving them." He smiled at her, but something unsettled remained behind his eyes. "Actually," he said, his tone shifting, "there might be a puzzle already." He pulled a thin manila folder from his desk and slid it across the polished wood. "A week before the custody trial, my ex-wife's team hired a private security consultant to do surveillance on me, supposedly to prove I was an unstable presence." He leaned forward. "But here's the thing. One of my hotel managers tipped me off this morning. The same consultant has deep, undisclosed ties to a company we do business with, a major property management firm." Maya frowned. "A conflict of interest?" "Worse," Benjamin said, his voice grim. "Possible corporate sabotage. I don't have proof yet. But if someone inside my own business was feeding information to my ex-wife's team, that's more than just a betrayal. That's a crack in the foundation of this entire company." Maya opened the folder. Names, invoices, surveillance photos. One name jumped out at her. Kyle Brandt, the operations manager for one of Hart Holdings' smaller but critically important hotel properties. "You want me to look into this?" she asked. Benjamin nodded. Quietly, carefully. No official channels yet. After everything that's happened, I need to know who I can trust. Maya's stomach tightened. This was infinitely bigger than organizing files or chasing down court dates. This was an internal threat, but she also understood the stakes. Benjamin had only just begun to rebuild his life. He couldn't afford to be blindsided again. "I'll start tonight," she said, her voice firm. "You'll have something by the end of the week." He studied her for a long moment, a look of profound gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, Maya." That evening, Maya rode the train home with the folder zipped securely in her bag. The city blurred past, a tapestry of murals on brick walls, kids playing ball in alleyways, a world in constant, vibrant motion. Her world, which had once felt so small and contained, was stretching, opening up into something vast and unknown. When she got home, she kissed her mother on the forehead, heated up a bowl of gumbo, and opened her laptop. A new tab, a new investigation, a new truth to uncover. Her heart was steady, her focus sharp. She wasn't just an assistant anymore. She was a guardian. The morning after the Lakemont mixer, Maya sat on the train, the city rushing past in a blur. She gripped a hot paper cup of coffee, her hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from the electric thrill of knowing she held a weapon. The recording from the previous night, now saved in 3 separate, secure locations, was a confession. It was the key. She arrived at Hart Holdings before the sun had fully risen, taking the stairs 2 at a time, her heart pounding a rhythm of anticipation. Benjamin was already in his office, pacing. "Maya," he said, his eyes fierce, "do you have any idea what you handed me?" "Yes," she said simply. "The beginning of a much larger story." He closed the door, his voice dropping to a low, serious tone. "This recording connects Kyle Brandt directly to corporate sabotage, but it also opens a trail. If I follow this, we may uncover a much deeper rot. Fraud, misuse of funds, maybe even criminal behavior." "I figured as much," she replied. He looked at her, a new level of respect in his gaze. "We can't go to the board with this yet. Not until we know how deep it goes. I need you on this, Maya, every step of the way." Her breath caught. "Me? You've proven your judgment. I trust it more than almost anyone's in this building." He pulled a small, heavy key from his desk drawer. "This is for the Level 4 archives. The old property deals, email logs, internal reviews, stuff that never made it to the digital servers. Kyle started his career down there 15 years ago. If he has a history of this, its bones are buried in those boxes." Maya took the key, feeling its cold weight in her palm. "I'll be careful." "Be thorough," Benjamin said. "And if anyone asks, you're reviewing old compliance documentation for the annual audit." She smiled. It wasn't even a lie. Level 4 was a cold, forgotten basement, a tomb of filing cabinets and flickering fluorescent lights. Maya felt like she was stepping into a place where secrets went to die. She rolled up her blazer sleeves and began to dig. Hours bled into one another as she sifted through years of corporate history, memos, printed emails, expense reports. By early afternoon, she found it. A memo dated 2011 from Kyle to a regional director requesting an emergency payment to an unnamed subcontractor. In cash, a complete violation of company policy. Scribbled at the bottom in a different handwriting was a single damning note. "KB says it's handled. This feels sketchy." She kept going. In a box marked Legal Holds 2015, she found a complaint letter from an employee at a Savannah property, alleging Kyle had pressured them to falsify a safety inspection report. The official investigation, according to the file, had been closed as inconclusive due to missing documentation. Inconclusive, my foot, Maya whispered, a cold fury rising in her. She photographed every document, logged everything she touched, and returned to the gleaming upper floors with a USB drive full of ghosts. This wasn't just detective work. It was an excavation, digging through years of corporate silence to unearth the truth. That evening, Benjamin took her to a small, quiet Italian bistro, a place tucked away from the city's glare. "It's where I took my son the day I won custody back," he told her. "He hated the pasta but loved the breadsticks." They talked for hours, not just as boss and employee, but as allies. "You didn't have to help me, Maya," he said quietly. "And you didn't have to pay my mother's hospital bill," she countered. "Now you're carrying a weight that isn't yours to carry." "I don't see it that way," she replied, her voice steady. "You opened a door for me, Mr. Hart. I'm just walking through it." He looked at her, his expression serious. "I just don't want to see you get hurt. This could get ugly." Maya met his gaze without flinching. "I've already been through storms. I don't fear the wind anymore." He raised his wine glass. "To the truth," he said. She clinked her glass against his. "And to the people who are brave enough to chase it." In that dimly lit corner of the city, a partnership was solidified, built not on contracts or convenience, but on shared purpose, mutual respect, and a quiet understanding that they were about to bring the storm to Hart Holdings. The Monday morning after their dinner, Maya laid out her findings in a small, secure conference room. Benjamin had brought in his private counsel, Howard Reyes, a calm, analytical man who listened intently as Maya walked him through the evidence: the 2011 memo, the safety report cover-up, the financial links, and finally the damning audio recording from the mixer. "You've built a compelling trail," Howard said, impressed. "But to make it stick, you need a direct line. Something current that shows Kyle is still actively abusing his position." "I might know how to get it," Maya said. She told them about a contact she'd made in the housekeeping staff at the Lakemont Hotel, a woman named Rosa, who had overheard Kyle discussing shifting invoices. Rosa was scared, but she was willing to help. That evening, Maya met Rosa at a small taqueria. When Maya showed her the evidence she'd already gathered, something shifted in the older woman's eyes. "He makes you feel like he's untouchable," Rosa whispered. "No one is untouchable," Maya said. "Not anymore." Rosa agreed to wear a wire. The next morning, Maya arrived at her office to find the door slightly ajar. Her heart leapt into her throat. Inside, her folders had been subtly moved. On her desk was a sticky note, unsigned. "Careful who you trust. People are watching." Her blood ran cold. Someone knew. She immediately informed Benjamin, who moved her desk closer to his own wing and upgraded her security access. "I'm not scared," she told him. "No," he replied. "But they are, and that makes you a threat." The next afternoon, Rosa wore the wire. In a private hotel lounge, Kyle Brandt, feeling comfortable and expansive, said the words they needed. "I shifted the last 3 invoices through that shell corp. It's covered. Hart will never know." He laughed. "And if anyone ever checks, I'll make them disappear." That night, Maya and Benjamin listened to the crystal-clear recording in his office. It was over. "You did it, Maya," he said, his voice full of awe. "No," she replied. "We did it. Rosa did it." "Tomorrow," Benjamin said, his eyes hardening. "We go to the board, and Kyle Brandt will be done. For good." The boardroom at Hart Holdings was a circular chamber of glass and dark walnut, a place where fortunes were made and careers were broken. The board was already seated, a collection of mostly older, skeptical faces. When Benjamin introduced Maya, their curiosity was palpable. She stepped forward, her voice clear and steady, and began to lay out the case against Kyle Brandt. She presented the timeline, the memos, the financial inconsistencies. Then, She played the audio recordings. A collective gasp went through the room. The evidence was irrefutable. After a tense discussion, the vote was unanimous. Kyle Brandt was to be placed on immediate administrative leave, pending a full federal investigation. As the board members filed out, a few paused to shake Maya's hand, their eyes filled with a newfound respect. When they were alone, Benjamin turned to her. "You were exceptional," he said. "I just did what needed to be done." "No," he corrected her. "You just changed the future of this company." Later that day, Benjamin called her back into his office. The board was so impressed, they wanted to offer her a formal position. Head of the new Internal Ethics and Compliance Department, a full title, an executive-level salary, and the power to build a system that would prevent this from ever happening again. She stared at him, stunned. I don't have a degree in law or finance." "You have something better," he said. "You have judgment, you have grit, and you have an unshakable moral compass. You belong here, Maya. You just have to believe it too." As she stood at her new office window, looking out over the city that pulsed with life below, Maya understood. This wasn't just a job. It was a calling. It was the culmination of a journey that had started with a simple act of kindness in a rain-soaked parking lot. It was proof that justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet, persistent voice of someone who simply refuses to look away. This story is a powerful reminder that our greatest strength often lies in our integrity and our willingness to stand for what is right, even when we feel small. Maya's journey from a quiet observer to a catalyst for monumental change proves that you don't need a title to be a leader. You just need courage. Have you ever had a moment where a small act of kindness changed everything? Or where you had to find the courage to speak a difficult truth? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience could be the inspiration someone else needs to hear today. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and share it with your friends and family. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more incredible, real-life stories that celebrate the power of the human spirit to overcome adversity and create lasting change. Thank you for watching, and remember, be the person who doesn't look away.